Hello to everyone and welcome back into the channel, and thank you for joining us for the series finale / discussion review. Up to this point, it's been a very interesting series. Even though we haven't reviewed all of the episodes yet, those reviews will be dropping every Saturday until we post our actual CW series Swamp Thing season review. Now, if you've been here before, you already should know the drill. Each discussion contains full spoilers, so be aware of that. And so, without any further ado, let's get into it. So we start this week's episode exactly where we left off from last week, as Abby tries to console Alec, who is having an existential crisis. And for those who might be just a little bit familiar with philosophical concepts, this is the classic mind-body problem dilemma, being plugged right into the source material of a comic book. So big up to the writers for that. And just as Abby tries to get through to the Swamp Thing, he senses that men are coming, but this time he knows things are different. He then summons vines to pull his old body into the water, burying Alec Holland for good, and then prepares himself for battle. We then join Dr. Jason Woodrue and his wife Caroline, who is duct taping his wife to the chair after her nearly overdosing on her meds. The overdose has resulted in some type of catatonic state called locked-in syndrome, which allows for her mind to be completely conscious, but her body paralyzed. Now in Jason's mind, he's securing her to the chair in order to keep her safe, but to the audience, we get a different feel from Jason. At this point, it doesn't really seem like he's trying to take care of his wife. It just looks and feels more like domination. And judging by the look on her face, as he prepares to try to feed her pieces of the Swamp Thing, it appears to be the same for her as well. We then transition to Abby, who confides in Liz about Alec's state. She blames herself for what happened to Alec, which is a common trope used in television in order for us to garner a little sympathy for our protagonist. But in Abby's case, it's the guilt that she feels for losing her best friend, Shauna. Liz interjects that it is important to find out who's behind Avery Sunderland. By doing so, only then will Alex be safe. But just before they part their ways to get to the bottom of who's dealing in the swamp, Liz spills a little bit of tea on the table in regards to Avery Sunderland committing Maria to the Barclay Institute. And poor Harlan, we don't hear anything else from him ever again in this series. Maybe he had to go off and shoot more episodes for Westworld. I don't know. We then meet with Nathan Ellery, who indeed has a crew of men ready to move in on the Swamp Thing's position, just as Avery arrives. Now, despite the fact that this marks their first meeting, the two don't get off to a good start at all. Nathan Ellery is somewhat cross with Avery Sunderland for not having the exact type of intel he needed in order to counter the Swamp Thing with fewer casualties. And to Avery's dismay, Nathan seems to have a little bit of information about his investor as well, revealing what he knows about Avery's connections with Lucilla and what he's been going through as of late. And as far as Nathan is concerned, Avery Sunderland is cut out of the deal unless Avery could get his house in order. Now Liz pays Daniel a visit, who's in the process of packing up to leave town, and tells Liz that he just can't seem to get the Blue Devil out of his mind. He then hands over the keys to the shop to Liz, offers his final goodbyes, and unlike before, he is able to leave town, crossing over the Murray city limits. Now, even though Avery locked Maria up as both a means to repay her for her betrayal, as well as a means to keep a watch on her, the walls seem to be closing in on Maria. And just like Avery in his time in the swamp, she's beginning to hear voices as well. Somehow, Madame Xanadu pays her a visit and confirms that it is the darkness that ails her due to Maria trying to make contact with her daughter back in the second episode. Madame Xanadu also tells Maria that there is a way to make peace with the darkness that plagues her. And then a few scenes later, when Abby comes to visit Maria in order to get more information on who's behind experimenting in the swamp, Maria has made peace with that darkness, which allows Maria to be with her daughter again just like she remembers, but only in Maria's mind. This is one of many instances in the show where the characters we've rooted for or hated on begin to meet their fates. As we continue on with Jason Woodrue and his wife Caroline, Jason is preparing his wife a meal combined with cultures from the Swamp Thing, specifically the heart, which contained the highest concentration of mutagen. It is meant to reverse her paralyzed state and her Alzheimer's. Jason, however, takes a spoonful first to test it on himself and has a reaction, one that seems to have had no adverse side effects. Well, maybe were it not for the tablespoon in two from his touch. Afterwards though, he says he feels a profound connection to all the surrounding plant life. Abby then arrives, still in search for answers, and quickly tries to contact the authorities. Jason exhibits unnatural strength and hoists Abby in the air with ease, knocking the phone out of her hand. But the police trace the call and show up, tasing Jason, allowing Abby to go free. Liz shows up later after having heard the call over the police scanner, as Jason is escorted to the station. And it seems like we've seen the last of Jason Woodrue, which technically we did. After having a few drinks at the bar, Avery is told that Matt was in an accident the night before. It was at this point that I personally thought that Avery could possibly have a redemption arc. Despite having his wife committed, the fact that he showed up because Matt was his son would at least make things respectable, right? When he shows up to the hospital, Lucilla sees no redemption in him at all, telling him to stay away from their son, who, as it turns out, he did stab. A little while later, Matt wakes up with Lucilla by his side. He is told by the nurse that he has a visitor, or Avery. Lucilla promises that they will see their way through everything that's happening around them. And after Lucilla gets in her car to leave, Avery is in the back seat, and in a shocking twist, stabs Lucilla right through the seat with a machete. Avery then leaves her in the back of the car and sinks her into the swamp. But just before Avery leaves the scene, he hacks up some type of plant life, letting us know he's not off the hook so easily. Not long after Nathan Ellery and his crew enter the wood line, they're able to spot one of the Swamp Thing's tracks. However, it isn't too long after the swamp begins to play the same trick on them that the darkness did to Avery, and the plan that they had quickly evaporates, as the swamp seems to rearrange itself according to the will of the Swamp Thing. He then begins to pick them off one by one in brutal fashion. Poor Jake Busey. And by design, Nathan Ellery is the last man standing. He pleads that he can turn him back into Alec Holland, but the Swamp Thing refuses any help, stating that Alec Holland is dead. He then lets Nathan go free in order to spread that message. Moments after Nathan runs off, he is confronted by a mental projection of himself, and the dialogue that takes place is similar to what is said when he meets back up with Abby in his old lab, coming full circle as it were. As much as he would love to leave humans to themselves, Abby is the only reason why he feels compelled to stay. She also feels the same way. Alec Holland might be dead, but the Swamp Thing, the physical representation of the green, lives, and Abby Arcane has no intentions of leaving him alone. At the very end of the episode, Matt returns to the police station left in shambles, and upon further investigation, he finds some strange growth of vegetation has overrun the station, as well as Tyler's body with wood spikes protruding from his back. Matt grabs Tyler's gun and is startled just before his flashlight settles on a creature. The creature speaks, telling Matt that it was Jason Woodrue, just before lunging at Matt. Man, the Cables can't seem to catch a break. Well, that just about concludes this week's breakdown or discussion. And if you haven't already done so, please make sure you hit that like button and the subscribe button as well. Really helps out the channel. And again, make sure you keep your eyes open for the review for the pilot episodes, which will air next Saturday. And until then, see you then.